Kevin, I'm going to pose the question to you. With the Bulls having a resurgent season so far, starting out at 4-1, on a scale of 1 to 10, just how exciting do you think this Bulls team can be this season?
I mean, we talked about it yesterday when I was driving from Isabel's house. Um, Alex Caruso might go around, and I don't know if you guys remember that Doug McDermott conversation Kyle and I had a couple of months back, where I was jokingly calling Doug McDermott the GOAT. But Alex Caruso about to get his statue out there in front of the damn Bulls Stadium because, yo, Caruso is nice. This Bulls team is nice. Granted, their first four games were against very mediocre teams in the Pistons, and then obviously facing off against the Pelicans and another team for whatever reason. I can't remember which one it is. The point of the matter is, I think Chicago is meshing well together early. Everybody knows Zach Lavine is the go-getter on that team, the best scorer on that team. Everybody knows that Nikola Vucevic is going to be the focal point inside the paint. He can extend the play, or he can extend the court with his ability to hit big-time shots out on the perimeter. We all know that he can defend on the block as well, averaging a couple of blocks a game, if not a block and some change. The biggest thing for me was seeing how DeMar was going to mesh, being a very ball dominant individual, pretty much the majority of his career being the man in Toronto and then being the focal point in terms of the last couple of years being on San Antonio. And then Lonzo Ball kind of being a little bit of a journeyman early on in his life, or should I say in his NBA career, starting off in LA, getting traded to the Pelicans, now in his third NBA team, and I believe his fourth or fifth season. So you really look at this like, well, how are these personalities, how are these talents going to work together? And it seems like it's working out just fine. I mean, Lonzo Ball had a triple double the other day. I believe Zach Lavine has scored 30 if once or twice already this season. DeMar DeRozan is doing what he needs to do. And then Vucevic is handling his business down in the paint. Caruso's been a great spark off the bench. And of course, I mean, when you really look at it, I think this Bulls team has the potential to make some noise in the Eastern Conference. By no means am I saying they're going to go out there and be a top two, top three seed. I believe they could flirt around with that fourth or fifth seed if they continue the success that they're having. I did see something, however, that my boy Kobe White is rumored to be on the block in terms of being traded. So we will see what happens on that front. But the thing that lacks on the Bulls is unfortunately depth. There is not a lot of depth on this bench. There's not a lot of players here that you can see outside of the starting five or the 6 or 7 man rotation that's going to lead you to say, well, what if Zach's in foul trouble, or what if DeMar is hurt? And obviously, those examples go on for everybody on that team. So letting go of Larry Markkinen did not seem to be a good move for the GM of the Bulls, because that did make a big. That could have been a big unit in the second unit. I don't know why I just said unit twice. That could have been a big point on the second unit, and or he could have definitely still started at the 4 spot, because if I'm being honest, I don't know who the 4 is in Chicago.
Patrick Williams.
That was one of the draft picks that they got from Cleveland last year. Or is that someone that they actually drafted?
I believe that's somebody that they drafted.
So, I feel like Larry Markkinen could have definitely been a big piece to kind of make this team that much better than it already is. But again, it's early on in the year. We're talking about game 5, and they just lost to a very good Knicks team. So curious to see how the season progresses. Definitely not going to sit here and get overhyped and say that they're going to be one of the best teams in the league, but they're meshing very well together so far, and I'm not surprised, or I'm kind of surprised.
Well, if I had to say, like, on a scale of like 1 to 10 of like how excited I am with this team, I'd probably put it at a 7. I think a 7 is a fair number to kind of put on this team as far as what they're going to be able to do as far as excitement goes. The reason being is that really ever since Jimmy Butler left the Bulls, they've really been a team that I would kind of consider as like an NBA purgatory. They'll have like some flash moments or like some flash highlights here and there, but they weren't really a team that I would consider that was really vying for, the top of the Eastern Conference in any way, shape, or form. But when you bring guys in like Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, and DeMar DeRozan, I want to specifically focus on the DeMar DeRozan acquisition. I think that's a great veteran presence to have on the team, simply because, look, he's one of the best mid-range players in this generation as far as just being able to knock down shots from 15, 20 feet out on a consistent basis. He is great for that. And I think that guidance that he can bring to a bunch of young players in Zach Lavine, in Lonzo Ball, in Alex Caruso, I think that stuff is very invaluable. And it's one of those intangible factors that a veteran can bring to a really young team. And I think they could really rely on his veteran presence for the rest of his tenure with the Bulls. And I just think that when you pair DeMar DeRozan with Zach Lavine, who seems to be the number one player of this team, you know, the amount of scoring options that the Bulls have, not only with DeMar DeRozan and Zach Lavine, but to go along with Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, like the scoring options are definitely going to be there for them. And Nikola Vucevic as well. I forgot to add him in as well. So I think the scoring options, I don't think that's going to be the issue. It's whether or not they're going to be able to hold up on the defensive side of the ball. And one of the troubling things that I've seen so far from the Bulls, despite the fact that they've got off to a 4-1 start, is in some of these games, they're getting out rebounded in double digits. So to focus on the Knicks game that took place just a couple minutes ago, they got out rebounded 49-37. And there was another game earlier in the year where I believe they were playing against Toronto, and they also got out rebounded in the double digits as well. So granted, Nikola Vucevic is a solid big man down low, but Kevin, it's like you mentioned, it's like at that power forward spot, they definitely seem to be lacking. And I don't want to denigrate what Patrick Williams can bring to the team. It's just I wouldn't say that he's the best option at that 4 spot for them, as far as being a lockdown 4. So I think one of the things that we're going to see from this team is they're going to go through some growing pains. They are relatively young, but I think that this team, if they play their cards right and they're able to pull off some winning streaks here and there, I do think that this team can make the playoffs. I don't know how high they're going to get as far as seeding goes. If I had to throw a number out there as far as seeding goes, I'd probably say maybe like the 7th, maybe the 8th. They'd be in a play-in tournament situation in that scenario. But I do think that this is a team to be excited about if you're a Chicago Bulls fan. Granted, we're only 5 games into the year, so there's still a lot left to be determined with this team. But if the first 5 games are something to kind of judge where this team could go, I think this team could possibly make some noise throughout the season. And I do think that the best case scenario for this team is that, they could finish as like a 6th seed in the East. Worst case, they just missed the playoffs in the play-in tournament. But I do think when it's all said and done, with the pieces that they brought in to go along with Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic, I do think that this will be a playoff team when it's all said and done before we go into the playoffs.